Hey, this is John from Seven Dust and Projected, and you're listening to Focus on Metal.
Hey, Metalheads, Scott Thompson here, welcoming you to another dose of Focus on Metal. Have a returning guest this week. That's right, John Connolly. You heard him up front at the beginning of the show, and he is back with us again this week to talk about the latest release from Projected called Hypoxia. And we actually had John back on the show, I think episode 346, 347, something like that, when they released the prior release, Ignite My Insanity. So if you want to hear that interview, you can go up to focusonmetalpod.com, search for Projected, and that should come up. But this week, we are talking with John all about their newest one that just got released in June called Hypoxia. And just like the others, that came out on Rat Pack Records. And all the bundles and good stuff for this, except for the test pressings, are still available. So if you want to get yourself the deluxe fan bundle, or if you want to get the vinyl, and I should note that the vinyl is actually one that is mastered for vinyl as well. So a nice mastering just for vinyl, and it's on purple vinyl. They still have that up there as well. They have Hypoxia on cassette, and of course they have it on CD, and there's even a deluxe fan bundle that gives you the vinyl and the cassette and the CD, some guitar picks, some stickers, all kinds of other good crap in there. And those are still available as well. And if you don't have their prior releases, they still do have copies available of Ignite My Insanity as well as the debut Human. And you can get all of that and more at ratpackrecordsamerica.com/projected. And just remember, when you do Rat Pack, it's RATPAK. But before we get into Richie's chat with John Connolly of Projected and Seven Dust, just kind of wanted to mention a little bit about the, what was up in the news lately, and that is the reunion of Pantera, which I read that the other night, and I was like, you have got to be effing kidding me, because Richie and I did discuss that a few episodes back, episode called Legacies. And, my thoughts on that at the time were, you can go back and listen to it, was basically that, if you were a hardcore Pantera fan, that you were really going to probably be reluctant to want to celebrate that. But then, I think a day or two later, they roll out who the replacement players were going to be. And I, in saying what I said in Legacies, I never thought that they would talk about having Zakk Wylde fill in for Dime. And, I read that and I was like, son of a bitch. That's like the one person that I would think would have that kind of integrity and, dedication and all of that. And, being a good friend with Dime and all that stuff. It's like, God damn it, they had to pick Zakk, and that is a tough one to ignore. I'm a little bit more neutral on Charlie. Obviously loved Anthrax for years, great drummer, all that good stuff. But it's really the focus on Dime for me. And again, I was like, son of a bitch. Like, really? They had to pick the one guy that I couldn't deny would do a great job doing Dime's parts and doing them honorably and with a major shit ton of respect. So I don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see how this one all plays out. But yeah, definitely, I know what I said back on Legacies, and I never, ever expected to see that it was going to be a Zakk Wylde production. And also, interestingly enough, too, is the fact that Gibson rolled out a Rex Brown signature Thunderbird bass the same week they announced the reunion. So that was a bit interesting as well. And I got to say, very, very tempting bass. If you haven't checked it out, you should go and check that out, the Rex Brown signature Thunderbird. Really great hardware selection on there, reflex pickups, all that good stuff. So definitely a solid bass. Didn't even have a twinge of desire when they put out the Gene Simmons signature bass, but definitely This Rex Brown one, yeah, I'm really digging this one. I know Brian Weed at Tesla is also a big T-Bird fan, so I wonder if he's going to pick himself up a Rex Brown signature as well. Don't think he'd ever use the detuner function on there, but yeah, again, very, very cool bass. And I have no doubt that at some point, probably in the near future, Richie and I will probably be discussing this whole thing. But anyways, just need to get that off of my chest. And why don't we get back onto the program with the intent for this week? And that is Richie sitting down with John Connolly, talking all about the brand new release Hypoxia from Projected, as well as a bit of band history and, some of the recording stuff, touching into Seven Dust, a lot of stuff these two go through this week. So great interview for you. And I'm going to kick that off right now.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
I'm all right. Where are you? Where are you based?
I am in Orlando.
Oh, okay. I'm just outside of Boston.
Hot. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Originally from a little bit further across the pond. I'm from Ireland.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Connolly. So, yeah, I've got quite a bit of family over there.
Yeah. Have you played there?
No, we haven't. I've been through it when we went through... back when Alter Bridge did their, I guess it was right before the pandemic, like in 2019, they did a run through the United Kingdom. So we got to travel with them, went to the UK. But yeah, we've never played Ireland, so it's definitely on the list.
Okay. What other parts of the world are on the list that you've never played?
South America. I mean, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Like, we have attempted and tried multiple times, and it's just the planets will not line up for whatever reason. So, and it's sort of an unusual one. Like Australia, we can make a habit of, but South America, we still have yet to set foot. So we got to work on that too.
Wow, that's weird. And
really weird, right?
Yeah. Well, do you have favorite countries you like to visit, or do you like to do that when you're off the road and maybe go with the family?
It kind of depends on what the girls are really into. I mean, I'm trying to get them to commit to the plane flight to get to Australia because it's a fascinating place. But it is a commitment. Yeah, 2 days of your life are basically just sitting on a plane.
Yeah, you'd need a month in Australia really to have a look around.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. There's so much to see over there. One of my favorite places for sure. But yeah, I mean, just Iceland, a cruise to Iceland is what the girls want to do. We went to Alaska a few years back, and now Iceland's on the radar. So
I can't recommend Iceland enough. I spent 4 days there about 10 years ago. It's an amazing place. If you're into scenery,
that's what everybody says. Yeah, everyone says the same thing.
That is the place to go. Okay,
good. Because that'll probably be the next. If we're going to do a big one, that might be the next one.
Okay. Okay. So I want to ask you a little bit about Projected as a band. You're on your third record now. Has that been like I don't know if I'm using the right term, kind of a happy accident that it's come later in your career that this has gone off on a tangent now, you've done 3 records, or is it something that you always planned that you wanted to branch off into other bands anyway?
I mean, it's sort of both, because I think when I originally... my whole path through this business was very similar to Dave Grohl. I started as a drummer, spent my whole life as a drummer, and then just got frustrated with the songwriting process. I was in a band where it was like, all right, you're trying to get songs in, nobody listens to the drummer, and they're like, oh, you know how to play guitar? I'm like, I know how to fret a bar chord, and I know how to sit down, I know how to hum a tune. So it was more born out of frustration than anything. Okay. And just, I'm sorry, the voice. I completely spaced here. What was the original question?
Has it been like? Has the band been like a happy accident?
The plan thing. The plan thing. Yeah. I had intended on doing, as you pick up the guitar and you write the song, you meet Morgan, I meet Vinny, we go in the studio, and all of a sudden you're the guitar player and the singer, and I was like, I'm not ready to be the singer. You know what I mean? Like, I'm already so out of my element on the guitar. I didn't own a strap, nothing. So the intention was always there. But I remember Morgan looked at me and was like, man, I know this dude who absolutely has like the best stage presence. His name's Lejean, and we went and saw him, and I was like, yes. I was like, I don't think he's going to do it, but 100%. We need that. We need the confidence. We need somebody who's very comfortable in that space. And I just wasn't there yet. It was one of those things where it was like, I needed to get my grips on standing up, playing an instrument at the front of the stage. And some of the stuff, like the earliest stuff that we had done wasn't super technical, but some of the stuff wasn't easy to play, especially for a guy who had only been playing for a few years. So I think the idea was like, okay, yeah, maybe. But it took me a while. I mean, it took me a while before I was comfortable enough singing backups with Lejean, understanding songwriting. You spend that long with such good musicians, it's going to rub off on you. So I think when we took that break before 2012, it was a conscious decision. We were a little burnt. We were coming out of, we had just gotten back with Clint, which was great, but we were sort of at the end of a lot of turmoil with the business side of things, a couple lawsuits, and that stuff had just dragged out for a while. So we said, why don't we take a break? Let's take 6 months, just pause for 6 months. We'll put a window. And then we were like, you know what? We could probably squeeze a year. Our fans are going to lose their mind, but they need the break. We need the break. And that was it. That was the moment where everyone sort of said, well, if there's anything else you ever wanted to do, here's the opportunity to do it. So, I guess it was sort of an accident, but we all jumped at the opportunity, except for Lejean. It was crazy because you had Morgan and Clint went, and they did Call Me No One. And then me and Vinny grabbed Flip, and we went and did Projected. And Lejean's like, what's going on here? And of course, the whole world completely implodes. They're like, Seven Dust is over. That's it. That's it. The writing's on the wall. And we were like, no, man, like LJ's actually on the record. Like we support each other. Like, but this was, at the beginning for us, or I guess any band who hasn't done those side projects yet, it's a knee-jerk reaction for everyone to think that that's it. But it was the farthest thing from the truth. It was just like, okay, let's just see how dumb this will end up being. Like on the first record, we were like, all right, literally record the whole thing on an M-Box in a home office, threw some drapes up in the closet. That was a vocal booth. It was completely like the way you never should really make music, but it worked. And then I'm sitting there thinking, all right, well, we did mix it. We had Elvis mix it. But, I don't know, man. I watched Billie Eilish and her brother win everything with a record that they made in the spare bedroom in their parents' house. So it's 100% possible to do it. Yeah. I think it just depends on what, I don't think it really depends on what it sounds like as much as if there's good songs there. And we didn't know that there were good songs there until we actually got it sort of like closer to the mixing process. And I remember, because we worked on Elvis, he was like, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do it. It was one of those things where we'd have to squeeze it in. And then he was like, you know what? I've got 10 days where I can jump at this thing. And I was like, all right, cool. And I sent him the songs, and he was like, dude, where have these been? And I was like, all right, I'll take that as a compliment. And he's like, no, man. He's like, I'm serious. And I was like, dude, any piece of music that I ever write gets played for everybody. Like most people that are in both bands have access to the master like Dropbox folder. If you want to go in and you want to hear the songs, they're there. There's a lot of them, and they just exist in there. And sometimes they end up on a Seven Dust record, and sometimes they end up on Projected.
See,
and sometimes when the song ends up on the other band's record, the other band gets mad.
See, this
you know what I mean?
This fascinates me, John, about what you're saying about all the songs being available, because I want to know what form the songs are, because you said you're a drummer and you play guitar, so you're probably putting bass on it and you're putting vocals on it as well. It's a complete song that's in the Dropbox, or the skeleton of the song?
No, it's even further than that. I mean, it's way further than that. Usually I've got most of my Dropbox set, like if you go into the session, I've probably got 20, 24 tracks with programming, strings, and there's probably some vocals on everything. I always have vocal tracks down at the bottom. Sometimes it's caveman. Sometimes there's no words at all. Sometimes it's just gibberish. Sometimes it's absolutely terrible and it's never going to make it onto the song. But at least it was part of the process and they're there. But no. I mean, it's it's crazy. Like as I get closer to the record, typically I'll only write up to what we call like the bridge or the middle eight section, because those things are fun to dive in with the band. You know, it's fun when you get the drums there and you're like, all right, let's get something. What groove are we going for here? But when I'm not close to the record, I usually write that part and I write it all the way out. So, I mean, and most of these are literally like from intro to stop, you know. That's the thing about it was like 2 years with the pandemic, you know, I was like, all right, well, I can't do the one part of my career that, you know, does a lot, helps pay a lot of the bills, but I can do the other part. So I went down the rabbit hole, you know. I was just like, all right, let me get to work on a lot of this stuff and, you know, take the deep dive and see if we can just finish songs from A to Z. You know, and you start going through that process, and then you just start packing them into the Dropbox folder. And, you know, I'm not exaggerating. There's probably 80 or 90 pieces of music in there.
Has any of the guys ever picked a piece out of there that you didn't think was great, and they all said, wow, that's fantastic, and you scratched your head and went, I'm not seeing it?
5 times a record. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, literally, I just came back from... we're getting ready to go into the studio on July 11th, I think is our load in.
Yeah. But
before we hit pre-production, we wanted to get together as a band, you know, and just say, all right, let's all get on the same page. Let's talk. Let's vibe out. Let's see where everyone's, what are you guys thinking? You know, Clint opens up his Dropbox. I open up my Dropbox. And I start playing these songs, and I'm like, all right, these guys really going to be into this one. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we go to another one. I'm like, okay, they're not vibing on this stuff. And I accidentally hit something on my desktop. It was like one of the ones that was sort of like, in case of emergency, break glass. And I hit it, and I remember Clint goes, wait a minute, I love that. What is that? And I was like, oh, really? And sure enough, the next tune, same thing. Next tune, same thing. So it was like literally in like a 30-minute period, I went, okay, we're not making the record I thought we were going to make, and this is awesome, because I had so much of that, you know. So, I mean, that's the beauty of the process. I was like, look, I don't have demo-itis. I don't know what kind of record I want to make. I know what kind of record the next projected record I want to make is going to be. But you know, when you're in a band like Seven Dust, you're like, what's everyone vibing on? And for me, it was great, because it was like, oh, you know, I only had a certain amount of the thing I thought you were going to go for, and everyone went for all the weird stuff. So I was like, and I'm sitting with one today, like it's everyone's favorite, and I don't hear a chorus on it at all. And I wrote the damn thing, you know what I mean? But I cannot wait. I mean, Clint was like, can you please send me these stems so that I can get to work on this? And I was like, okay. That's the beauty of having that, you know, as an option. But yeah, I mean, everyone gets to hear everything. I mean, you know, it was funny. Clint even told me, he was like, man, he was like, I was a little jealous. There were a couple tunes on there that I thought could have been Seven Dust tunes. I'm like, well, and he goes, I know. He goes, but you don't hear it until you get the whole picture and the whole presentation sometimes. You know, sometimes it's weird. It's like, I don't know, like I hate relying on the sonic, whatever's happened sonically, because it's like the song should be strong enough just to do what it needs to do without anything. You should be able to just sing it in front of someone with no bells and whistles, and they either get it or they don't.
Yeah,
that's usually where we end up. But it's interesting, because there's those. Elvis always kind of cracks up, you know, because he's like, "You're trying to just get through these, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just because they haven't blossomed. Like they're there, but I need everything in place, and then you need to mix it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute." The two that I thought were like barely going to make the record, Watch It Burn. Watch It Burn wasn't going to make the record. You know, I was like, it's not working. Got with Mark for 15 minutes, and it ends up being the first single in the video. So, you know, I mean, it happens all the time. I'm telling you. Like every time that I can almost predict it now. I'm like, all right, we're just going to have fun with this, just because it's fascinating to see what people, you know, what direction they want to go in. Projected is a little easier, because I sort of pick the direction and kind of plan it. But yeah, in the world of Seven Dust, you never know. But it makes for great projected records too, because I'm like, literally, there were 4 pieces of music that I brought in that I went, I really like singing that. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of hope the guys don't go for it. And I think I was 2 for 2 this time, so I was like, all right, cool. That was a nice, surprise. I've got 2 that I hadn't planned on being on the Projected record, but that's sort of the way it works. You're drawn to music. I don't know when I'm going to do the next Projected record, but I sort of have a really, really good grasp and a good idea of what the vibe is going to be and how it's, at least things that are available. Who knows what my mood and, what I'm going to be into a year from now, but that's the cool thing about the whole songwriting process is you log it. And then, so one of those days you just open up a file and you're like, all right, feeling this one. Why didn't I feel it 2 years ago? I don't know. And then there's other times where you open it up that you're like, yep, 2 years later I still hate it. But I know if I play it for one of these other knuckleheads that they're going to go, oh man, that's my favorite. And Morgan is notorious for it. No matter what, the first thing out of my Dropbox he picks, I'm like, all right, we need to not finish this song because it kind of puts us in the weird vibe. But it's sort of, it's a necessary part of the process because it's like, okay, the first one's almost like it's a sacrificial lamb. We know it's probably not going to make it, but it sort of gets the ball rolling, it gets the juices flowing, and it's your warm-up tune. So sometimes they stick, but sometimes they don't. But the cool thing is, with having Projected, and like with Mark with Tremonti, I mean, he goes through the same thing. There are times where he presents stuff to Alter Bridge and it's just like they didn't go for it, and then it ends up on his record, and then the guys are going, damn it, why didn't we grab that one? Dust was like a classic example. I was like, that's one of the best songs you've ever written. He goes, thanks, man. And I was like, I can't believe Alter Bridge passed on that. He goes, man, it was a close one, but yeah, it was just just the nature of being in bands. You never know, man.
Yeah. I'm sure you have a lot of guitars. Do you go along with the saying that every guitar has a song in it?
I think so. I mean, I think different ones kind of inspire different things. If I'm looking for a certain vibe, sometimes I'll grab the Explorer. Sometimes I'll grab my signature Explorer. And there's 2 totally different vibes between the guitars. I mean, even though they're both Explorers. Sometimes I'll grab my old Les Paul. Sometimes I'll grab one of the new Thoroughbreds. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of that whole thing that I go back to. It's like, it's either like trying to tune the radio station in or fishing. It's like you have best intentions of catching everything when you go fishing, but some days it's just not hitting. And then other days, the first cast out there, boom, it just lands in your lap. I think picking up a guitar definitely has an effect. Whether I pick up this one or that one, it's going to affect the journey 100%. Because I don't know what I'm going to play until I'm sitting down. Like, there are times where it's like, I try never to like, oh, I heard something and I want to go. Like, I don't want to hear music before I come into this room. You know what I mean? I don't want anything to influence me to go in a certain direction. I kind of like to just see what happens. You just start vibing on stuff. Some days it's heavy, sometimes it's light, sometimes it's middle of the road. It's never something that I go, okay, we're going to write this type of song, today. I don't know. It's more like Christmas. It's like, I don't know where the journey is going to end up, but the choice of guitars definitely has a huge effect. I'm looking at half of them right now. I literally just got to the point. We had so much stuff in storage. I brought all of the MLs, because nobody knows that I play MLs, but I actually do play MLs quite a bit, especially in the studio. There's just more real estate there. It's just a really, really good sounding tracking guitar. I've got the 3 of them here. I've got my 2 signatures, and then I have my old Les Pauls, my old Explorers, the original Deans, Lost 100, and then my Thoroughbreds. So yeah, I mean, every guitar I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, that was first Seven Dust and first Projected. That was Cold Day Memory. That was Alpha. That was Home. I'm literally going guitar to guitar, and I'm going through the catalog. Yeah, man, it's definitely a thing for me. I don't think the same song comes out of 2 different guitars. I really don't.
You bring up guitars there, and I've been asking the guitarists these questions a lot. Do you have the first guitar you ever owned?
Okay, that's sort of a tough one. No, but I have the first one that I ever kind of laughed out loud when I bought it. 'Cause this is it's my first Les Paul. It was a pawn shop guitar. It was $275. It only had 5 tuning pegs, and the neck was unbelievable. It's a studio. There's nothing fancy about this guitar at all. You've probably seen if you've seen me play a Les Paul, it's the blue Notre Dame guitar. It's just a studio, and it was literally $275, and I'm literally holding it in my hand right now. That was probably the earliest one. My first guitar was an Ibanez RG 350. And I got to be honest with you, I had no personal attachments to that guitar at all. It was a good, solid guitar. It tracked pretty well. It had a tremolo that I hated because I didn't know how to play a tremolo, but it was, I was like, all right, I'm on a budget. I need a 4-track, and I need an amp, and I need a cabinet, and I need a drum machine, and then I need somebody to show me how to plug all this stuff. It was literally like no exaggeration. I went to the music store and I was like, all right, this is it. I've been saving up for a while. I'm doing it, and I had a couple guys. It was actually Peter Stroud, believe it or not. He was working at Atlanta Discount Music years ago, and he sold me my first stuff, and that started the journey. It was like, all right, you throw it all together and see what works and what doesn't work. Now I'm sitting here going, wow, it came a long way from that $200 guitar that had 5 tuning pegs.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten rid of a guitar and regretted it?
No. I mean, it's the weirdest thing in the world. I thought that I would. I really thought that I would. I sold off. I think part of it is because of proximity. I had 2 of my favorite Les Pauls, but they were bone anchors. They were 78, and I think one was I think it was either an 80 and a 79, 78, 79. It was right around that era where literally the things are like, they're 17, 18 pounds. I had 2 with maple fretboards, and I sold one that looked cool but didn't play as good to a buddy of mine up north, and then I sold the other one to Elvis. So every time I go into the studio, that guitar's there and I play it. And he strings it up for me too. Like, he has his tech, he throws it in B, and I go in and I'm like, all right, this is even better, because I would never have that guitar serviced and like ready to crush. So yeah, I sold it, but it's 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
I know where it is, so I don't have any regret on that one.
Okay.
Most of them I haven't regretted, because other than the Ibanez, I've got my first Les Paul, I have my first Epi Signature, I have my first Dean, I have my first Explorer. I've got a lot of firsts, and they're all right here in my studio. So I kept most of the firsts,
Good for you.
Yeah.
Some of the musicians I've asked that question, they said they lost them in divorces.
Oh yeah. It happens. Yeah. I mean, Clint was like, "Dude, man, I wish I had those first 2 or 3," and I'm like, I'm very thankful that it may not be in hindsight, if a Les Paul guy were to walk in here, he'd probably play this guitar and be like, "Wow, this thing, it's a strange guitar because it plays unbelievably." But you have to work on it to get it to sound quite as good as some of the other options that I have. It's not that it's bad. It's just sort of dark, and it sits in the back a bit. But it was the first one. Yeah. And it wrote a lot. It literally wrote pretty much the first record. So, yeah, if you want to know what that guitar sounds like, listen to the first Seven Dust record. Okay. Listen to Black. It wrote Black.
Okay.
So... No, actually, it didn't. I'm sorry. The Ibanez, in its defense, actually wrote Black. But yeah, this guitar wrote the majority of that album. So yeah, different guitars have songs in them for sure.
Right. I want to ask you about singing Hypoxia, the title track. The emotion behind it. I'm going to use an example of someone that I interviewed. I interviewed a guy called Jason Slater. He produced Jeff Tate. And he said the thing with Jeff was he had no problem hitting the notes. It was conveying the emotion behind it was the issue. How do you get yourself in a headspace to actually pull that off? Because it's a pretty angry song.
Yeah. A couple things. Like on the first record, I knew enough to be dangerous. I knew how to operate, Pro Tools. Obviously, I know how to write a song. Don't really know how to do much in the vocal process whatsoever, other than I know to open and stuff comes out, and after I do it for like an hour, it hurts. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, you know how to be the backup singer, but it was a totally different thing. I was like, I've never really focused on the vocal thing, and it would probably be a good idea to do it. I did it a little bit. Most of the first record was like, most of the takes I probably wouldn't be keeping today, only because I either wouldn't go that far to get to that take, or I would get there earlier, because this record was a major change, because when I went into the studio, all of the words, all the lyrics, all the melodies were written. So when Elvis opened up the Dropbox file, he heard songs. It was like, okay, obviously we tweaked, we produced, he got in and he was like, what if we did this instead? Or what if we moved the melody here? Or what if you put this harmony? A lot of times it'd be like, just hear me out, try it. And you do it and you're like, oh, fascinating. This is just exactly what we needed to do. But, I did a lot of rehearsal. It was one of those things, like when we loaded into the studio, it was like, okay, this is the first time I'm ever going to be under the microscope. It's the first time I'm ever going to have a producer actually produce, me, not engineer. I'm not used to just sitting in there with the headphones on and having someone engineer it, and then someone help me actually go through the parts. So I figured, here's a killer opportunity. I remember Elvis came in there like 2 or 3 days before I was going to start singing, and he kind of popped the door open and was like, what are you working on, man? I was like, just singing. He goes, new stuff? And I was like, no, I'm just rehearsing. And he was like, oh. I was like, I don't want to read these lyrics. Like, I would prefer to just get up there and sing the song. And he was like, oh, yeah. It was like, okay, cool. So it was like, I sort of did enough rehearsal on the front end to where there wasn't, sometimes when you got 12 pieces of music, it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is in a different thing. Hang on. Different vibe, different, your head's sort of all over the place. So did a lot of rehearsal. I rehearsed these songs, and that one in particular was one of the ones where I was like, okay, we're doing that last. just in case I can't come back, because there's 2 ways that you can do that vocal thing. Yeah. There's the one way, which does not, it's more of a trick than just pushing. And then there's the push way. And unfortunately in the studio, it's like such a marginal thing, but the push way does sound a little bit better, but it's not limitless. You know what I mean? Like, It literally is one of those things where it's like, okay, you're on the edge. I've given myself the migraine. Can I just go back to the other way? It's like, no, you got it. You got to keep doing it. And I was like, all right, but we sort of knew, and we set the whole thing up. Everything was, I did my homework, got in there. So I was confident, confidence was definitely up. And then, Elvis was just like, all right, man, sell it. I want to believe it. Sounds like you're reading the lyrics. I'd be like, all right, hang on a second. Let me, and then you just dump it. So, yeah, I mean, it was a totally different process, because I did things that singers are supposed to do. I started drinking tea. I started warming up, and just started singing a lot more. Like, just sing.
It's a muscle. It's like, you gotta exercise it.
It's a muscle. You have to exercise it a certain amount. Talking does X, but it doesn't equate to Z. And the crazy thing is, once you're in that mode, it's not that it's effortless, but it's like things that were challenging aren't challenging, because it's just working. Your voice is just, it's like anything else. It's like, you can't expect it to just be on demand. Like, you can't just, Miles will tell you straight up, he's like, I'm not walking in and singing that right now. I was like, I need, you know what I mean? Like, I've got to go through my drill. I've got to open it up. This is, he's driving a Ferrari over there. You know what I mean? Like, his voice is like, you better take care of it, because if you mess it up, and I guess we're not playing a show, you know. So it's a strange thing to, you know, as a guitar player, boop, broke a string, cool, give me another guitar. Yeah, with a singer, you're not doing that. So Hypoxia was one of those ones where I went, okay, I need to make sure that I can do it the other way, all the way from start to finish. And I did. I mean, it was like effortless on the demos. When I handed it to the guys, it was just like, okay. And it's much easier on the voice to do it. But yeah, for that one, we were like, all right, we want to go from your soul on this one. Yeah. You know, this one should hurt a little bit. So that one definitely left a mark.
Yeah. On this album, again, you've got some collaborations, like Mark Tremonti is one of them. When do you know when to collaborate on a song, and how do you choose the people to collaborate on for each particular track?
The one with Morgan was an obvious one because it was one of the last demos on one of our last writing sessions. We didn't have a ton of time, but it was one of those things that was like, all right, if we were going to do the metal thing, what would we do with it? And we didn't use it. And it was just sort of like one of those things where I went, you know, when I did the revisit on it, I was like, you know, I had LeJean singing because, you know, Morgan wrote the part and we put LJ's voice on it. It was like, okay, it's cool, but it wasn't like earth shattering for whatever reason. So, you know, I pulled it out, I don't know, a year and a half after I'd heard it the first time. I was like, you know what, let me throw my voice on it just to see. And it was one of those wheelhouse things. I was like, oh man, this is like right in my zone. This sounds really good. Yeah. So I hit up Morgan. I was like, hey man, you want to do a co-write? He was like, sure. I was like, cool, man, done. He goes, what do you mean done? I was like, you remember Dead Weight? He goes, you sang that? And I sent it to him, and he was like, dude, he goes, you sound really good singing that. That needs to go on the record. And I was like, all right, you know, and then fast forward all the way, and it's the opening track. Okay. So you're like, all right, you never know. Clint was one of those things where we had discussed doing something, but I didn't want it to be in like the Seven Dust vein as much, because part of it would be, all right, like, can people hear it or can we hide it? So Dark was an obvious choice because that was one that I had an okay chorus for it. It wasn't great. It wasn't earth shattering. His perspective on it was like completely fresh. It put me in just a different starting place, and then the melody line that he threw over that was, I mean, it was perfect. So it was one of those ones, I played it for the guys. I actually had his demo, because that was the only one that it was like the chorus was a question mark. I remember I walked out, E-Rock was standing there, Elvis was standing there, Vinny was standing there, and I just hit the demo. It was Clint just singing that chorus part, and they held their arms up, the hairs stood straight up on their arms. I was like, right? And I went in and I sang it the next day, sent it over to him, and it was like, all right, done, check the box. So that one was kind of like, you know, he helped me save a song that, arguably one of my favorite songs on the record as far as a piece of music goes, but it was just like, it needed that breath of fresh air, and that's exactly what it was. Same thing with Mark. You know, I'll just get frustrated with, sometimes it's just the same old. It's not that the part's bad. It's just I'm sick and tired of hearing my own shit. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just cool to give it to someone that you respect, because the beauty with Mark is it's always an instinct, knee-jerk reaction. Like, it's one of the most honest things. There's not a lot of thought that goes into that immediate reaction. And then he shapes it, and then he'll put the vocals to it, and then he'll give it to you, and then you go, thank you. Because I was ready to delete the song. He's done it time and time again. He did it on Watch It Burn. The song was off the record. I mean, it was not making it, because I was struggling with the chorus. I was just like, the chorus is not as good. Everything else was great, and the chorus was a letdown. You know, I was like, it's too good a piece of music to let go to waste. He did it on Rectify, and there was another song on the last record he co-wrote on, but Rectify was a big one. Okay. That was the one that was like, all right. And then My Addiction, same thing. And the funny thing is, there's people that have hit me up. They're like, man, is that Mark singing? And I'm like, nobody wrote it, so it should definitely have a Mark Tremonti vibe about it. You know, people hear My Addiction and are like, sounds like that could be on a Tremonti record. I'm like, 100% it should. You know, that's his melody. But, you know, for this record, I was like, you know what? Yeah. I was like, I have these opportunities that sort of just, it wasn't like we said, all right, let's go do a bunch of co-writes. It was like, all right, wait a minute. We have really good musicians that are making great music over stuff that I thought was junk. or like in Clint's case, one that I was so passionate about, I was like, let's not let this go to waste.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, most times it's sort of the song that drives me to wherever it is, you know.
Have you heard Mark Tremonti's Frank Sinatra record?
Hey, this is Mark Tremonti from Tremonti, and you're tuned into Focus on Metal.
And if you want to hear all about that particular album, then you can head over and check out episode 539 of our show, where Richie talks with Mark all about the entire Sinatra process. And again, that's up at focusonmetalpod.com, over at iTunes, or of course on Amazon Music.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure being able to see that start from nothing to go all the way through. And just, you know, I saw him when he first got into the Sinatra thing. I saw him when he first started his research. I mean, he spent money on gear, you know, and went so far down the rabbit hole. And just watching it go from nothing to, I was like, he's going to do this. I was like, for sure. And it's not just he's going to make a Sinatra record. He's going to do it with Sinatra's guys. You know what I mean? He's going to do it with the orchestra, the whole drill. Yeah, I mean, it was such a cool thing, because it's like, totally unexpected, but very cool.
If you were to do something left field like that, what would it sound like?
Oh man, that's a really, really hard one. I don't know. I mean, it's Tears for Fears. You know what I mean? Like, people would be like, wait a minute. Yeah, I could probably go and live in that world for a minute. You know, there's something that is so cool about, you know, that whole Duran, Tears for Fears era, where it was all keyboards. It was keyboards and programming, but there was really cool melodies that were happening. You know, it was like sort of anti-guitar music. So I understand why guitar players weren't into it, but I was like, man, there's some phenomenal songwriting going on. It would probably be something weird like that, you know.
Okay.
Journey's too predictable. Metallica is too predictable. But yeah, like, as far as if you were to go through my playlist, you'd be like, there's a lot of late 80s, you know, stuff going on here. I'm like, yeah, it's just good songs.
Hey, music moves you. It doesn't matter what style it is. If you like it, you like it.
Yeah, that's it. Like LJ with country music. He loves country music.
Yeah.
it's just, you know, he loves it, and he does too. And it's like, I don't turn it off, but it's not something that I like. I don't have it on a playlist. You know, once in a blue moon maybe. But yeah, I mean, it's cool when you go and you spend time over there and you're like, all right, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know.
So have Projected ever done a live show at all?
Yes, we did on the first record, and then the planets just have not lined up until now, which is good, because Seven Dust is going to be, we're doing one short run in September. We've got a couple radio shows, I think the Blue Ridge Festival, and I think we're doing Louder Than Life at the end of the month. But basically from October until around April, we're not going to be touring. We may do a couple shows around the holidays or something like that, but we got an opening, and Alter Bridge has a record coming out. So, you know, Flip's like, damn it, I'm going to be pulling double duty, aren't I? I'm like, maybe. I'm just saying, you know, but Seven Dust coming right behind. I mean, we're not far. Literally, Alter Bridge just got out of the studio. We're hopping into the studio, so we're only behind those guys maybe like by a month or so. I think the planets are going to line up this time, and I think we're going to have an Alter Bridge, Seven Dust, you know, Tremonti, Call Me No One, Projected, Clint, Morgan. You know, it's like there's an opportunity for something really, really, really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm so hopeful.
Yeah.
It's the first time that we've had this window of opportunity, and it's also the first time that we've got a common manager between all the bands. You know, Tim over at Janus manages, yeah, and his eye's on the ball. So he's like, and he understands how these things work between. He's really, really good at the side project thing. You know, coming from the Alter Bridge camp, he's used to, you know, keeping up with Slash and Guns N' Roses and, you know, Mark and Alter Bridge and what's going on over here. You know, is Flip doing anything with Projected? So now, I mean, he called me up on the last record. He goes, why aren't we touring this? I'm like, you tell me. And he goes, all right, we got to prioritize this. I was like, well, yeah, 100%, let's do it. I was like, unfortunately, double duty is going to happen in this band. You know, it's not so cut and dry. Someone's going to pull double duty unless we're not going out with, you know, Alter Bridge or Seven Dust, which would probably make the most sense because at least we've got we know where they are. I know where Vinny is. You're on tour. You know, it's not like you're doing anything else.
The one thing probably someone might have said is, you know, maybe if three of you can do it, you can get one other guy in as a replacement. Has that been even thought about?
We've thought about it. It's been one of those things where I was like, you know what? I wouldn't mind it if we. I want some shows.
Yeah, I hear you.
With these four guys, unfortunately, like, I want the first ones to be the band. Yeah. I don't want the first ones to be some other dude because he's out on tour. Unless the tour really made a lot of sense. You know, if it was a big enough tour where we were like, all right, well, this is a hard one to pass up. But we haven't had anything that was intriguing enough to make us want to make that move. We've had the discussion because it has come up a couple times, but never enough where it was worth it.
Okay.
I want the first experience to be the honest. You know, this is us. You know, this band sounds like us because there's four very distinct sounds and personalities coming out of it, and everybody is important. You know, very important. Some other guitar player out there is not going to be playing like E-Rock does. You know, another bass player would sort of get close, and Flip is sort of a style unto himself, you know, which sort of gives Projected the sound that it is. You know, his feel is just, it's a signature thing. Coming from a drumming background, the importance of a drummer in a band can't be, you know, stressed enough. It's that feel is what sells it. And that's the beauty of, you know, being stuck between two amazing drummers.
Yeah.
You know, Morgan Rose and Scott Phillips don't play remotely the same, but they have a very distinct style. Each one has his thing, you know.
Well, as a fan now, and I'll just finish on this, John. The one thing I'd find important if I went to see you guys play is just to play Projected music. I wouldn't want you to play songs from the other bands that you guys are in.
Right. That's sort of something that we've discussed. I don't think that I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing a Seven Dust song. And that's more of a respect thing, you know. It's like that if Seven Dust was no longer around and someone was like pushing for a song to go into the set, it would be something that would be considered, but it would still be a little weird for me. Same thing with Mark. He's like, I'm not singing an Alter Bridge song. He goes, Alter Bridge is still a band. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
Seven Dust is still a band, so it's like there's no point in me visiting that. Clint had an exception, and his exception was Angel Sun and Christmas Day, only because Christmas Day was written about his mother. Very personal song, and it definitely belonged in the show. And then Angel Sun, you know, that existed outside of the world of Seven Dust, but no, he's not going to do Denial and Waffle and, you know, Trust or anything like that. It's one of those things where I would just rather let one thing be and have it just be its own thing. Yeah. You know, well, I mean, E-Rock would be like, "Hey man, let's do a Tremonti song," you know, and Flip would be like, "Well, let's just do an Alter Bridge song. Fuck it." It'd be weird. It'd be like, no, this is just, we got enough material.
Yeah, you know, easily.
You know what I mean? We got too much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, John, it's been a pleasure talking to you again.
Thanks, man.
Do you want to tell people where they can go and buy the record?
Yeah, absolutely. Rat Pack Records. Rat Pack Records, you can hit us up on Facebook, you know, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. But Rat Pack is going to be home base for pretty much everything. We've even got the first record over there on Rat Pack as well. So all Projected music exists on Rat Pack.
Well, personally, John, I think the album's brilliant. Love it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.
And, you know, have a good rest of the day. And if you get up my way, I'll hopefully get backstage and say hello to you.
Yes, sir. All right, man.
All right. Take care.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Big thanks to John Connolly for once again coming on Focus on Metal, giving us the incredibly detailed lowdown on Projected's latest one, Hypoxia. And again, like I said at the beginning of the show, still available up at Rat Pack Records, and you can get the deluxe bundle, the deluxe fan bundle, just the vinyl, just the CD. Just like I said, lots of good stuff up there for anything that Rat Pack puts out. I swear to God, I think if Rat Pack had an option where you could just automatically get every single release they put out, I would probably sign up for it, because I get pretty much every single release that they put out. In some cases, as Richie will tell you, on CD and on vinyl. Good stuff. And again, that is at ratpackrecordsamerica.com/projected for all of the good shit coming out of John Connolly and company. And as I always try to note, when you do Rat Pack, it's RATPAK. So that will do it for this episode of Focus on Metal. I'm thinking that potentially the next show you guys will be hearing will be a very long interview, or actually it's not even an interview. Let's call it a discussion, because that is kind of what it is. And that is Richie and another guy on the Focus on Metal staff you hear every so often. That is Brian Heaton. And they are talking all about the Queensryche album, Here in the Now Frontier. And, probably you've heard Brian on the show before talking about Queensryche. He is pretty much the resident Queensryche expert. And he is also one of the co-authors of Building an Empire, which is an incredibly detailed biography of Queensryche. And also the guy that runs the website, anybodylistening.net. which he terms a Queensryche retrospective. So I'm thinking, unless something else slides in unexpected, that is probably the next thing you'll be hearing with us right here on Focus on Metal. And always great to have Brian on the show. So looking forward to rolling that one out for you guys. But for this week, that's it. There ain't no more. Stick a fork in it. This puppy is done. So for Richie, myself, and everybody else here at Focus on Metal, have yourselves a great metal week, and until we talk to you again next time, as always, remember...
Focus on Metal!
Everything else is insignificant.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.